The actual speech, or was that the sort of the getting in the papers part of the speech? And then what was he actually on about?
I don't know, Kieran, because it was trailed like, Cybergeddon and all of the stuff that was current about 10 or 15 years ago. And
Sorry, what do you mean by Cybergeddon?
Cybergeddon. So about 10 or 15 years ago, a couple of really senior people stood up and went, guys, the cybers are very frightening, and planes could fall out of the sky. We could all be literally dead in 1 minute due to cyber attacks.
Oh, this is like the millennium bug. This reminds me of a close family relative who I won't name. We all love each other, family, but he kept talking about this sort of, that lifts are going to drop out of the sky.
I remember being in a lift actually on New Year's Eve on the Millennium in Canary Wharf and thinking, oh my God, I hope the millennium bug doesn't kill us this lift.
Make the lift explode.
Yeah.
This is a bit of software.
Yeah. So, Kieran, so I was kind of phoned up all weekend by media outlets saying, what do you think about Pat McFadden saying there's a cyber war? And all of the normal commentators were nowhere to be seen. And so, of course, being a fool, I just stepped in where others feared to tread. But you're right, there was a big difference between the trail, which was like, we're at cyber war with Russia, which I thought was an incredible thing to say. When you look at the speech itself, it's much more careful. It's and yeah, you're right, there is the announcement that the UK government is putting 8 million or so into a new AI defence type of thing to help NATO. That's one thing. Another thing, maybe more significantly, is about sort of collective defence on cyber, which the UK is announcing a new incident response project. So those were the sort of announcement bits. But what's he saying about cyber war? So from the kind of Cybergeddon scare stories, which you can really get caught out, because if you're asked, well, is it possible for a cyber attack to take out, say, a whole healthcare system or the whole of a country's power? The answer is obviously yes, right? But that sounds incredibly... It sounds like you're just like scaremongering, though. Because
I wonder if this is tied in with because China, the US Senate Intelligence Committee said that China had managed to get into their bugging systems, and they'd found out that China was this thing. And then, of course, we've got a lot going on in Ukraine and Russia right now. And then, Putin has started warmongering a little bit, or at least putting those noises out there.
Yeah.
I do wonder how much of this is sort of, PR, and then how much this was already planned. I mean, 8 million in what did they say, 8 million in an AI program? I mean, that'll be eaten up.
Yeah, that's like going to last 5 minutes. Yeah. And so what I've been really trying to work out what's going on, because clearly in a war, Russia and Ukraine are at war. There is a cyber element of that. It's not controversial to say that the Ukraine is suffering, as Pat McFadden does in his speech. There's a hidden war Russia is waging in Ukraine on the cyber side. But he's also saying they're widening their approach against members of NATO and calls out some attacks against the UK and other NATO members. And so he's sort of eliding this idea that cyber things done in the warfare situation between Ukraine and Russia are also kind of war against NATO, which is an enormous thing to say, because normally cyber attacks are thought to fall below the threshold for warfare.
Can you see? I mean, we have a lot of where we're going is saying, we've been saying for a long time that the virtual world and the real world need to be combined, especially with laws of things like encouraging violence and so on and so forth. It would be, what's your thoughts, connecting cyber war and real war as in with equivalence?
Yeah,
that's a dangerous connection.
It is a dangerous connection. But on the other hand, the UN countries have all agreed a set of norms to say don't attack other people's critical infrastructure with cyber, right? That's a norm. Every country's signed up to it. That is a thing that the open-ended working group agreed back in 2021. But nobody's worked out, so what if you breach that, which Russia does all the time, okay? Yeah. All the time. And I wondered, maybe I'm overthinking it, whether Pat McFadden is actually trying to change the legal analysis in some way and say, actually, there has to be a consequence for just constantly flouting these internationally agreed norms. There has to be an answer. You can't just have one country that just doesn't stick by the rules. And so maybe he's trying to kind of, get NATO a bit more on it. I think this is also, Lucian, as much about Trump as it is about Putin, because this is, Kieran was saying this is a terrible moment for the Ukraine war, one where there could be escalation, but also, Trump's going to come in a couple of months. He's proven to be pretty friendly to Vladimir Putin and very hostile to NATO. So I've noticed a lot of kind of NATO members, foreign ministers the last week were all saying, yeah, we're all standing together. We're going to be more self-reliant. We're not going to be relying on, America so much, and we're going to put in more money. So there's a sort of moment for NATO before it's too late, maybe, to actually stand together.
Oh, so one of there's a part of this is the fact that, the traditional adversaries of the West have just got much better at it. I mean, the UK and the Five Eyes, especially in cyber, were always vastly superior in terms of their capabilities. And now the truth is, as we've seen, China is probably the best at this. That's the awful truth. And Russia's pretty good. So I wonder whether there's a redrawing here simply because the adversaries have got much better.
Yeah, and also, of course, all of the espionage activities you associate with Russia and China, they can break into critical infrastructure because they do it all the time to get positions for spying. Once you can do that, you're in, aren't you? So you could do anything. You could spy, but you could do something more constructive. Lucian's just not talking.
No.
He's not talking.
No, I've been told not to compare something, and I've been told to wait for my question.
So now he's punishing everyone.
I'm not punishing everyone.
You just talk.
I'm fascinated about this. I've got things to say.
Well, the big question is, if, let's say, let's use a hypothetical, if Russia hacks into a critical piece of infrastructure in, say, the US, or no, let's say in a NATO country, Belgium. Is Belgium in NATO? Must be.
Yeah, isn't it? Oh, I don't know.
Then does that mean we can send a missile into Russia? I mean, are we talking real equivalence here?
There is some precedent for that. So Israel a few years ago sent some missiles against Hamas over a cyber attack, but that's the only real kind of kinetic response I know of to a cyber attack. It's very rare.
I honestly don't understand any of this, or particularly what you're talking about, but we've used up half the time, so we've actually got to move on. But all I feel is that if you're attacking hospitals and if you're attacking banks and if you're attacking infrastructure, that is the same as dropping a bomb on a school or on a hospital. And it seems to me that NATO is sort of saying, if you're going to carry on doing that, that's not secret, sneaky, Cold War, spiesy stuff where we all try
it's not cool.
We all try and play this sort of cock length with each other. It's actually war. Yeah. And so if you're going to carry on doing that, taking out hospitals and stopping people having operations. In Ireland, they had a nightmare with that. That is an attack on NATO, a NATO member. And if you do that, that's an act of war against us.
Yeah, I think that's right.
A big
it's
deal.
Sort of throwing down the gauntlet. I think you're right, Luce, because until now, I think a lot of the NATO members have gone, we don't want to get drawn into an armed conflict because of cyber attacks. So they've really played it down and done some kind of like coordinated calling out. That hasn't worked in any way to deter the activity. So now it's a bit of a gauntlet. Maybe it's because they don't want Putin to escalate attacks against NATO because of the use of missiles in Ukraine.
Next up, we're going to be talking, I'm going to be whinging about Uber, which I love doing really. Musk and Uber, I sort of alternate between the two of them. Before I do that, it's time for our Guilty Pleasure Online. I really do love this
love
kind of
that music.
nightclub thing,
Yeah, it's
Charlie.
really
I
nice, the
absolutely love
vibes.
this. And Charlie's our sound engineer, but he's also our wonderful voice of God. Charlie, you're going to have a go at a guilty pleasure online. What's your guilty pleasure online?
My guilty pleasure online, hello the internet, nice to see you again, is old geezers talking about music and doing music stuff.
Is that Lucian?
Yes, I just
really,
watch.
this is really,
I just watch videos of Lucian talking about his days in a punk band.
Okay. This is the moment where
slobs.
Igor is away because of an emergency family matter. But this is where he gets up a picture of me sitting on a car in some band.
Yeah,
But
in 1999.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
Talking of me being talking of sad facts about me, I want to do a public apology. So maybe this isn't a guilty pleasure moment. This is a public apology. Okay. I'd like to apologise for what I said last week about watch repairers. When I talked about sad things on YouTube, I was talking about me being sad watching things on YouTube. I didn't want to suggest that people talking about watches on YouTube were sad in any way. I have huge admiration for all sorts of normal people who make YouTube videos about all sorts of fascinating things: dog grooming, watch repairs, little bits of cars. Here comes a watch online. I think we're about to see the watch that I was talking about online. This is not fair. Any innuendo that I find people who talk about normal things without sort of actors' trained voices and all of this sort of rubbish is in any way sad is not true at all. I humbly apologise.
I want to find out more about the geezers that Charlie was talking about. Which geezers are you talking about? Which ones are your top favourites?
So it's usually, it will be just like an old, I don't know, media composer who has been in the industry for like years and years, and he's like really, really good with tech, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's able to be like, yeah, so what you want to do is you want to, make sure this is plugged in, and you're just going to write a piece of music, and it just makes me really happy, because I'm like, if you know what you're doing, and you do your research, and you know how tech and software works, you can be any age, any demographic, and you can learn or just understand how it works, and it just makes me happy.
Yeah, and I love YouTube for learning. Maybe there's a YouTube video on how to use Uber if you've once been flagged as a bad actor, Lucian. Is there something...